And there I was. I was the girl from Suits.
This one's wife. This is the worst yet. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. What could it be that this one's wife has engaged in to attract the mantle of this is the worst yet? Well, there's certainly a long list of unpleasant behaviours that she has engaged in to choose from, a list which continues to increase. Might it be the behaviour in relation to the suggestion of a racist within the royal family, twisting the words of other individuals, and thereafter causing a repeated headache for an ageing monarch who had done nothing other than serve her nation? Might it be the repeated attempts to thrust attention upon herself in circumstances where it was inappropriate to do so? Might it be the stolen valour behaviour in Dusseldorf, where, marching with that smug rictus grin at the front of the veterans, that caused so many to be angry about her conduct? Might it be the bullying of staff or the bullying of Princess Charlotte? There's much to choose from in terms of various things that you might determine to be despicable behaviour from this one's wife. But we turn to Daniela Elsa, who writes for news.com.au, who tells us, in political circles, it's sometimes called taking out the trash. Have a bad news story that needs to be released, put it out late on a Friday, or on the same day as some big event like the Melbourne Cup, to ensure as few people pay attention as possible, as they are busy swigging warming glasses of Aussie sparkling. This week, by complete accident, Prince Harry and this one's wife, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, were the beneficiaries of exactly this. For days now, the biggest royal story in the world has been that of newly promoted Queen Mary and the world's first Generation X King Frederick, Buddha speed wearer and poster boy for Manly Waterworks. What that has meant is that every royal writer worth their debrettes has been laser-focused on goings-on in Copenhagen, rather than the latest Sussex-related hullabaloo that has taken over London. But a hullabaloo there has been, after Harry's nemesis of a newspaper, the Daily Mail, started serialising excerpts from highly respected royal biographer Robert Hardman's new book, Charles III, The Making of a Modern Monarch. So far, the revelations have ranged from the entertainingly wry, years ago Queen Camilla's family nicknamed her Lorraine, a play on La Reine, the French words for the Queen, to stirring up a major Sussex controversy. I know, we've been here before. Oh, so many times. Some new morsel about something that Harry and this one's wife did, said, wrote, emailed, ate, mimed, or spelled out via Morse code, doing the front page rounds. How many times has some new titbit or claim that cast the couple in a shabby new light come out, to be swiftly followed by the UK's commentariat, getting on their high horses and going for a good long gallop? But we are in new waters today. Waters where the late Queen was so upset by the Sussexes that she was pushed over the edge, and new waters where a woman, famed for her reserve and for being an enigmatic, emotional black hole, was left infuriated, and as angry as her staff had ever seen her. So what had the late Queen in such a tizzy? At heart of all of this is Lilibet, her late Majesty's childhood name, and the name that the Sussexes picked for their daughter in 2021. Here is how things have played out. Baby Lily was born on June the 4th, 2021, and on June the 6th, an Archewell spokesperson revealed her surprising name, with a spokesperson for the couple telling the UK Telegraph, "The Duke spoke with his family in advance of the announcement. In fact, his grandmother was the first family member he called. During that conversation, he shared their hope of naming their daughter Lilibet in her honour. Had she not been supportive, they would not have used the name." Except then 5 days later, the BBC's royal correspondent Johnny Diamond popped up to report that despite the Sussexes' claim, the Queen had not, in fact, been asked about having her private name co-opted by the couple. Crucially, Buckingham Palace did not deny this. However, within hours of Diamond's reporting coming out, legal letters from the Sussexes' go-to law firm Schillings, it really says something when you have a favourite firm for legal argy-bargy, were being sent to publishers and broadcasters, saying that reports that Harry and this one's wife had not asked the Queen's permission were false and defamatory. Pausing there. The use of lawyers, as I've explained previously, by certain narcissists is used as a means of asserting control over individuals and nullifying threats to control. Certain narcissists are notoriously litigious, utilising lawyers as hired guns in the pursuit of that particular prime aim. Thereafter, the Duke and Duchess did not take any further action, yet the story is not over. Later in June 2021, it was revealed that days before Princess Lilibet's birth, that is, before they had gotten the late Queen's okay to use Lilibet, the domain names lilydiana.com and lilibetdiana.com had been purchased by the couple. That act in itself, to my mind, stinks even more than the use of the name in the first place. As I've explained in separate videos, it's either the case that the name was purloined, appropriated by this one's wife, whereby her narcissism told her, "You can do it to honour the Queen, it's a homage." That still doesn't detract from the fact that she acted with a sense of entitlement, doesn't detract from the fact that she showed no accountability for her behaviours or emotional empathy for the Queen in taking something which was a very personal name and utilising it for her own purposes. Now, of course, nobody owns the use of their own name. But it was not just that. It was a nickname, and it was a nickname used by a very small circle of individuals, which this one's wife knew. More likely, because the Queen was painted black, this one's wife decided, "I'll use that name," and that whenever she faced criticism of doing so, her response was, "Well, serves them right after the way that they've treated me." The fact is that when it came to the issue of a child being born, one of the greater considerations for the merchandising Duchess of Delusion was to ensure that the prospective name of her child had been purchased and registered as domain names. For those of you that are parents, I could probably say that none of you have ever engaged in such behaviour, that when you were anticipating the birth of your child, you were more worried about ensuring that the birth went smoothly, that the child was healthy, that you were excited to see this little crotch goblin coming into the world. The last thing that was on your mind was, "Oh, I must ensure that I register a domain name in there in relation to their name." This shows once again the absence of emotional empathy on the part of this one's wife. The cold and callous approach of, "I need to register the name." It also demonstrates, of course, that she saw fit to use the name without seeking any permission or approval, because that predates, as Daniela Elsa points out, the actual conversation that purportedly took place between Harry and the Queen. Accordingly, they were going to use the name irrespective of what the Queen thought. And if that conversation did take place about apparently seeking her blessing, It really was closing the stable door after the horse had bolted. She was going to be named that whatever. The registration of the domain names proves that, and once again demonstrates the chicanery of the Sussexes and the lying nature of this one's wife. Elsa continues by explaining the story then died away with about 877 other Harry and this one's wife hurly-burly ding-dongs and royal family disagreements having emerged since then. However, then came this week's Hardman Charles III serialisations, which have raised new details about what he says happened in those days in June 2021. He writes that one of Her late Majesty's staffers privately recalled that Elizabeth II had been as angry as I'd ever seen her in 2021 after the Sussexes announced that she had given them her blessing to call their baby daughter Lilibet. The Mail's royal editor Rebecca English followed that up by reporting that the Queen was so upset by the Sussexes' decision that she told aides, "I don't own the palaces, I don't own the paintings, the only thing I own is my name, and now they've taken that." Ingrid Seward, longtime editor of Majesty magazine, has written, "It took a lot to push the Queen over the edge." It's a shocking, strange image of the late Queen, whose sphinx-like impenetrability, a woman who never, ever gave away what was going on inside, unless, of course, one of her horses won. One thing you need to keep in mind about those events of June 2021 is the timing. That phone call, when Harry spoke to his grandmother, came only 3 months after their blistering Oprah Winfrey interview and their claims of bias. Only a month after Oprah, the late Queen lost her husband of 74 years, a man who she had known since she was 13. Forevermore, one of the most iconic and moving images of the late monarch is the shot of her small figure, isolated, grieving, and alone inside St. George's Chapel at Windsor. Which is to say, when the Duke called the late Queen, when one would have to imagine emotions were still very raw and the late Queen was still suffering from such extraordinary heartbreak. While the Duke and Duchess of Sussex might have meant the choice of Lilibet as a tender show of deep affection and respect, instead, their selection only inflamed and upset the monarch. Still, the end result was that a recently bereaved 95-year-old who was still working full-time, and whose health would only months later start to decline, was left infuriated. One thing the Crown achieved was to make audiences see the late monarch as a human being, as an actual person, and not just to see her as a distract, wooden figurehead of a nationhood. Queen Elizabeth II was a remote symbol of the state, but Lilibet? She was a woman who was truly loved by her parents, and who for more than 70 years was adored by her husband. A woman who reportedly liked jammy dodgers, loved all things on 4 legs, at which you could put a bet on, and spent the 2020 lockdown binging Line of Duty. And she was a woman we know now, at least according to Hardman, who in her final years was left deeply upset by the myopia of her grandson and granddaughter-in-law. To understand why the use of this pet name was so emotional a thing, then look no further than an image from Prince Philip's April 2021 funeral. Atop his funeral was a handwritten note signed Lilibet. For the Sussexes, these Hardman claims are damaging stuff. No matter where many people might stand on the question of Harry and this one's wife, by and large, the late Queen is a figure who earned huge global respect for her unerring duty and dedication. It reflects abysmally on Harry and this one's wife that they reportedly caused such an esteemed trooper of an Nigerian distress in her final years. But it could be worse. Imagine how much more attention this all would be getting if Frederick had not suddenly become king and Australians had not rediscovered their obsession with our Mary. The Duke and Duchess should really send the new king and queen a quick note of thanks, though leave off the vegan oat latte gift basket. They've got enough going wrong already. Thus, Daniela Elsa identifies the fact that Queen Elizabeth was ostensibly someone that was not seen to be emotional, but she got emotional about this use of her name. And it demonstrates once again the nastiness of this one's wife in knowing that the use of such a name would cause distress, but naturally, she went ahead and did it anyway. That it was a cynical move as evidenced by the registration of the domain names, and that she was determined that it would happen irrespective of what spin the Sussexes put out about obtaining the Queen's approval. They presented a fait accompli to her, and it's demonstrative of her pursuit of the prime aims and the absence of emotional empathy, narcissist that she is, that such behaviour has come to be labelled as the worst yet. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.